Alright guys, first of all, thank you for watching this video, and as we go along through this commentary, do me a favor, just let me know in the comments if you like this kind of thing, if you like this kind of content, this kind of video. It's definitely a little bit more raw than what I usually post on the channel. Let me know if you'd like the commentary more throughout the video rather than just the raw video and photos as we go along and then the commentary at the end. I just figured that there are quite a bit of people out there that would like to see just some unedited, raw, straight out of camera video and images and then commentary so they can kind of make their own judgments as they're watching and then hear from me regarding how I felt about using the camera, using it in this kind of scenario, the experience, the trip, whatever it may be. So yeah, just let me know what you think. That said, overall, I absolutely love the camera still, love using it, loved it for photo, liked it for video, and we'll start there. I'll put some time codes in the description below if you just want to ignore the video because you think this is a photo first camera and just want to see that, you can skip ahead. But for those who do want to hear about the process of using Fujifilm's X100VI for video, in terms of keeping a small package, it's great. You've got the 4-stop ND filter that made shooting in daylight very doable with no accessories added. For this video and for the sake of keeping filming pretty simple, I didn't shoot in F-Log2 or anything like that, though I think I will in the future just to get that experience because I've heard it's a really good profile to shoot in. But again, for this video, I shot in the Reala Ace film simulation. I set the dynamic range to 400 and made a few other adjustments. I'll have to go back and check. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I will put the settings in the description below. But shooting with the dynamic range set at 400 meant my base ISO was 500. So the ND filter was absolutely a must, considering just about all of this video was shot not just during daylight, but like peak daylight hours. So everything was very bright, but still I found myself really not having to close the lens any more than f5.6, f8 at worst. Most of the time you still were able to keep it somewhere in the middle, but in daylight wasn't shooting a lot at f2 unless I was in the shade or the sun was at a specific angle outside or I was inside, just because it's just too bright and you would need a stronger ND filter to cut that brightness down. Also, for the sake of keeping things simple, I also just set the white balance to daylight. And since I knew I was going to be shooting during daylight or outdoors or avoiding indoor lights and using window light for most of the stuff I was getting, I didn't have a problem with that. I did not touch the color or make any adjustments to color in what you just saw in post. That was all, again, straight out of camera, no adjustments. As for in-body image stabilization, I did shoot with the IBIS turned on. However, I did not have the image stabilization boost setting turned on, and I wonder if this is why on a couple of shots you're able to see some wobble in the footage. It's not necessarily just like the outer corner wobble either. There was kind of some toward the middle of the frame as well. You might have to look pretty close to see it. I did in editing. but it is there, and it's something that I would prefer not be there. I did find that using just some basic image stabilization within DaVinci Resolve, not doing anything too crazy to it, it was able to iron most of that out. So if you're gonna be editing the footage and not taking it like straight from camera in a rush and posting it in a rush, you should be just fine. And again, I do wonder if the image stabilization boost setting will help, but that's just something that is there, something I noticed. But one, I don't consider this like a video first camera, so it really doesn't bother me that much, but it also seems very fixable. And before we move on to my takes on this camera for photography on this trip to the Oregon coast, I should also say that I used the everyday filter from Polar Pro and Short Stash, the 49mm version, to go on the front of my X100VI. It is a 1/4 mist combined with a circular polarizer, and it did take some of the digital edge off the footage. I did appreciate that a lot, and I think that's why especially some of the sunset footage and backlit footage within this video looks as good as it does. Typically when you're using something like a 1/4 mist filter, I find backlighting the subject or the scene really looks, God, I hate to say cinematic, but it looks great because it lifts the shadows a little bit and doesn't make your image look as harsh and helps some of that highlight to shadow roll off. Okay, on to photography, where I quite frankly have nothing bad to say. Again, all of the photos that you saw were straight out of camera. There was no editing done to a JPEG, nothing done within DaVinci Resolve either, and everything looked really good to me outside of maybe one or two things with exposure I might have done different. That was probably one of the few inconsistencies I think I had, but that is purely user error and not the camera. The recipe I used, I also am a big fan of and think it's a terrific recipe for everyday timeless photos that aren't so grain heavy or filmic to the point where you might not want to use them in the future or they might not fit every occasion. I think the recipe, which is in the description below, is one that fits just about any scenario, especially during the daytime, especially when it's sunny and at sunset, and it's got just a nice, warm, soft feel. I think the combination of the everyday filter and the recipe itself, and this lens on the X100VI did a great job in keeping contrast when shooting directly into the sun. It did a great job of not making too harsh of an image because a lot of these shots were taken during harsh daylight time. The recipe itself is a version of a Mike Chudley recipe that he had for the X100V. He used the nostalgic negative film simulation, and I think he said you could use classic chrome as well, but I went with nostalgic negative to kind of give it a warmer amber feel. I did make a couple of tweaks to it. The recipe again is below if you want to use it for yourself or try it out. But I made a couple tweaks to it since I was using a mist filter with it. And I also like the fact that my video was shot with the Reala Ace film simulation and the photos were taken with this nostalgic negative film simulation because it helped kind of tell the difference when going from video to the warmer tones of the photos and making them kind of stand out and pop more when you did pop the snapshot onto the screen. Just a personal taste. Let me know what you think in the comments. For this trip and this video, I shot all the photos straight manual. I think that just helped me dial in the exposure, especially some of the shots indoors to what I wanted it to be, and allowed me to really customize how slow I wanted my shutter speed to be. And I will say that's where this in-body image stabilization helped a lot, because I was able to shoot at some pretty low shutter speeds to keep the ISO down when indoors and still get sharp images. I have since started experimenting a little bit more with aperture priority, something I really haven't done much of in the last few years, but for the sake of making shooting more, I don't know, fun or effortless in a sense, I do want to see what it's like. I do have some frustrations with it sometimes when it comes to exposure compensation and things just not quite being how you want them, or it's not quite as easy to dial them in when you have the camera making some of the adjustments for you, even with the exposure compensation dial. But I think that's, again, probably more of a user thing and will take some getting used to for me, but I have enjoyed it so far. But for this video, shot everything in manual. In terms of battery life, I never exhausted a battery when shooting. Typically, we would go out, whether it's for a meal, a hike, an afternoon, an evening, whatever it may be. I typically turn the camera on and off in between times when I know I'm shooting, because it's quick to boot up and then quick to turn off. I can conserve battery that way. I'm not missing shots that way because it is quick to boot up. So the most I ever got a battery down to is maybe like 40% left, which is pretty darn good if you're shooting that way, and that's including obviously shooting video with some image stabilization. I did always carry a second battery with me, but never found myself needing to go to it. And then by the time I got home, I could quickly recharge, the battery I was using and have no problem. So if you're shooting that way, I don't think battery life is as bad as some people have said. But if you're leaving the camera on all the time in order to make sure you can just pull it up and shoot right away, maybe you will run into some issues. Maybe you won't, but that's not how I shoot. Not yet. I haven't had to be in that scenario or that situation yet, so hasn't been an issue for me. So to keep from rambling on too much longer, I'll just sum things up by saying I absolutely love the process of shooting with this camera and of using it as a daily driver, especially on vacation with my family. I think it is also worth noting that it's the combination of the quality with the compact nature of the camera that allows the X100VI to live up to its hype. It doesn't matter what kind of sensor you put in a small body if you strip it of so many other features that the camera becomes not fun to use. Lumix. It doesn't matter if your camera shoots super, super, super high quality, but is just bulky beyond wanting to take it out like you would with some full frame cameras and massive lenses. I think this is right in the sweet spot in terms of really good quality with a 40 megapixel sensor, a good quality lens that resolves that sensor well, and the features that this camera packs into its compact form for photography. For video, there are some compromises in terms of the port selection, but I don't think that really compromises the footage you're gonna get to a certain extent, and certainly having an ND filter, being able to shoot in 6K, being able to shoot at 4K 60, all of those things in 422 color, all of those things make it a good enough video camera to use. That's just probably not the most enjoyable video camera to use. So yeah, let me know what you think of the video. I will be doing more X100VI content in the future, probably quite a bit. And if you guys let me know that you like this kind of video, certainly throughout the summer, throughout hikes and travels and trips and things, I'll take it and I'll do more like this and try to, conform it to what more people want to see. And as much as you may comment telling me you like this kind of video, a subscription would tell me that you really like this kind of video and would allow the channel to keep growing. So, while you're down there leaving your comment, dropping a like, be sure to subscribe as well. I'm Chris Hagan, and I'll see you in the next video.